Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business. All right, today we are joined by Peter Nudd, who is the founder of Star Solar, located in southern Indiana. And I've met Peter here through the podcast, and he's got an interesting story, and some of it you'll notice as soon as he starts to talk. So, Peter, why don't you first introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay. Name is Peter Nudd. I'm English, as one might expect from my accent. I've been doing solar in the US since 2015. And prior to that, I had a solar company in the UK from 2000 until 2015. And if you can do solar in the UK, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah, we have the same sun, right? So it's the same.
The English one's a little bit weaker.
Is it a little further north? But so you built a solar business in the UK, and then you decided to come over to America and try your luck here. And this industry's been challenged as of late. But tell us about like the first 10 years. Well, I guess first, what provoked you to want to do that, and then kind of what did you discover about starting a business in America? How was that different?
Okay, so when I came over here, the reason I came over here was to marry an American lady, and we're still married, which is good for me. And when I decided to come over, I had to have some form of income. So I'd started the solar in the UK, and it went pretty well, very well, in fact. And then when I came over here, I thought, well, that's a good reason to start here. Did some investigation from the other side of the pond, in that we see if there was an interest in it and what the solar situation was like in the US in general. And it was a fledgling industry, shall we say, because
Mm,
the main part of the solar industry is derived from the German model, which they did a million roofs project for the German government, and that sort of promoted a lot of
mm,
big start in Europe. So a lot of the companies that we use now for manufacturing of support systems are still German based or German origin.
mm,
So that's why you see so many strange names on the solar panel systems and the support systems. But when I
mm.
came up here, bearing in mind I'm based in southern Indiana and we're right on the border with Kentucky, which are both coal states. So there was a lot of reticence when I first came
Yeah.
over about actually starting up the solar business, or the fact how it could be credible over here, and people wanted to maintain coal and that sort of thing. So there was a little bit of
Mm.
resistance. I actually got accused by one person of stealing the sun, but we won't
I-
go into that one. But there was a lot of skepticism when I first started, and building up trust in people, and then it was an education process to say that what the cost of it was. A lot of people do still have preconceived ideas of the cost of a system without really
Mhm.
knowing too much about what's involved in it. And when we did trade shows, showing people what was going on with the solar industry and how it could affect them and how it could benefit them, they had no idea what the cost of a solar system was, and still don't. Uh,
Mhm.
and we try to make that process easier for them by taking all the responsibility off them, just going to see them, pacifying their any objections they've got that are not relevant. I mean, if they have got some objections that are relevant, when we'll discuss them and how we can overcome them. And that has led to, and also we've been in the same building since I got here, and we've got some pretty reasonable signage, so people know where we are. Oh yeah, I know where you guys are. You're down on so and so. So that has helped to promote trust that we've been here for a while,
Mhm.
because as the industry sort of boomed over the last few years, but boomed unrealistically and unsustainably, in the fact
Mm.
that people were I would say, trying to cash in on the industry and
Yeah.
making promises that couldn't be fulfilled, and making work practices that weren't really sustainable. So, and it's
How
starting to get to
so? I
that
mean,
stage.
I'd like to hear more about that. Because I know I've seen the increase in solar businesses over the past few years. Wasn't really sure why, other than obviously there's incentives and stuff out there. But what are some of these practices that you've seen that aren't working?
Well, there's being in the industry, I know firsthand of some of the companies. I don't know if I should name them. Not really in business anymore,
Mm,
but one of the ones was Power Home Solar, who then had so many, I think 360,000 lawsuits against them. They
yeah,
were operating throughout the states, and they just went bankrupt and then started up again straight afterwards. As Pink Home Solar, and then the same thing happened. They just, I think, I don't know the internal politics of what it was, but basically they weren't training their staff up. People were on commission based
mm,
sales, so they were going and promising things that couldn't be done. And we've seen a lot of instances where the actual technical side of it, how it was sized, how it was set up, was not sustainable. I mean, if you've got a
mm,
fairly large storage battery, because they sold their products with a storage battery, which is a great idea,
yeah,
probably before most people started thinking about solar storage. But they would put in a battery and then not put enough panels in to charge it up. And they'd be telling people, like, you only need 5 solar panels on your roof and you're going to have no more electricity bills. And this is the salespeople doing this. And then when
right,
it's come out to do it, because not many people would know how many solar panels you have on your roof, and that the orientation of the roof, whether it's south facing, east facing, west facing, can affect the amount of panels that you need. And of course,
mhm,
how many you need, because they are fairly large in the physical size of them. So that when you put them up, you might think, oh, that's a big area, that'll do it. But it doesn't.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
so then we get the situation where uh, now they've gone out of business. People come up to us and say, "Oh, I've got a pink energy system, and it's not working." And when we go there, things like the batteries haven't been connected. In some cases, not all the solar panels have been connected. Um, and they did a lot of subcontract work, which meant that they weren't really monitoring it. So therefore, it was
mm,
not of a good standard. And I think that
yeah,
applies to a few other companies that were, I know, in this area, where their
yeah,
work practices weren't good.
yeah,
In the fact that, you're on someone's roof, you've got to make sure it doesn't leak. So we only use proprietary items that for making that have been tested and certified throughout the various parts of the roofing industry and the building industry and codes and things like that. So when
yeah,
they start putting those up and people get leaks, that gives the industry a bad name. Oh, this thing
yeah,
doesn't, or they're not connecting things up. And people say, because they signed them up on a finance deal that was normally over 25 years, which is the normal guarantee practice for solar. So all they
mhm,
were doing really was prepaying their energy, because they're massively,
right,
because on those finance packages, they were going with companies who are now out of business as well, or finance companies who were putting massive dealer fees involved in that. So this wasn't
mm,
explained to the client. They just come up, oh, 5 panels with a battery is going to cost you $50,000, which would normally be less than $10,000. So they'd end up paying this, and then they've got a system that doesn't work. They've signed up for a loan which is going to be paid over 25 years. So I'm sorry about that. So they then end up bitter and twisted, because they paid out money. They're still paying electricity bill, and they're paying finance bills as well.
mm,
So it didn't give the industry a good name, and I
yeah,
think in some ways now a lot of those companies who expanded too fast out of their own state and into other areas, and therefore using subcontract labor, I think it will stabilize the industry a bit. That's my feeling, that people will not be subject to this high pressure sales that
mm,
is not 100% honest.
yeah. Yeah, so we saw this rush into the industry, a bunch of people who didn't have the experience, probably did some shoddy work. Now the industry is starting to stabilize because of tax credits going away, and it's going to probably drive a lot of people back out. Would you assume that?
Yes, I would think so. I mean, you got things like roofers suddenly thinking, oh, we can make some money out of this. We know how to do a roof. They don't know how to do solar. Like conversely, if we wouldn't go and say we'll do someone's roof because we can do solar panels. So, and electricians thinking that they could just cash in on this and, put in a solar panel system without really understanding how it works and decide. And a lot of the electricians backed out very quickly out of the industry when they realized how much was involved. And
Mm.
I know from personal experience that trying to get an electrician on a roof is virtually impossible. So they subcontract it all out. And it's, I think, in most industries where it's a fast growing process, there's going to be a lot of mistakes made and a lot of people trying to cash in, and therefore, and you only hear about the bad ones. So when it's a bad system and it gets on the local news, they love to come on and say, oh, it's never going to work, and we don't know why people are doing solar. So people are entitled to their opinions, but need to do a bit more research, I think, on the companies that are actually going to be installing it and read their reviews and see what
Mm.
their actual
So
status is.
you use your own team, your
Yeah.
installers all work for you. You're not doing any of the subcontracting, right?
No, we don't do subcontracting at all. I mean, we have affiliations with roofing companies where if we go out and we see that the roof is not in a good condition, because we don't really want to put solar panels on this roof that's 10 years old
Right.
or older, because you're only going to get problems with it. Oh, I've got to turn this off. I'm sorry. So what we do then is talk to these roofing companies and we say, right, can you come out and inspect the roof for us and give an appraisal of what you think the longevity of the roof is? Because if we start putting systems on a roof that old, some of the shingles are old and cracked and it leads
Yeah.
to leaks. It's not going to do anybody any favors if we start just saying, oh, we can put them on any roof.
Yeah.
And
Or it gets damaged 5 years from now and they have to
yeah.
come in and take your panels off to replace the roof. That's no good either. That's right.
Well, that's the point actually, that we've had a lot of work recently. I think about 3 or 4 months ago, we had a tremendous hailstorm that went all the
Yeah.
way through from up near New York, all the way down to I think it was Mississippi or something. And there
Yeah.
was the hail was unprecedented, really, in the fact it was about an inch and a half solid ice coming down
Right.
40,000 feet. It did tremendous damage. And what happened then was we've now been called in by people who've predominantly who've had their roof put on, solar roof put on by someone who's now out of business. And of course, they can ask, can you take our panels off? And
I've heard about this. Yeah.
we're doing a lot of those at the moment. We're taking panels off, and then we're looking at you're looking at how the system's been put on and whether we can reinstate it. But I think we've probably got about 20, 30 jobs on that basis at the moment that we're looking at.
Wow. So does hail do as much damage to the solar panels as it does to the roofs, or is it more just
That's an interesting point, because like one we did up recently where the guy had PVC fencing and gates around, it looked like he'd been shot by a machine gun.
oh yeah,
Not any damage to the solar panels whatsoever. And,
interesting.
and out of all the jobs that we've been and done, which is quite a few recently, none of the solar panels have been damaged.
That's interesting. That's good to know. I
Yeah.
always wondered because they look like glass. I know they're a special type of tempered glass, but still, you kind of wonder. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
So twisting a little bit, you ran a business in the UK for 15 years, and then now you've run a business in America for 10 years in Indiana. What's the difference between those two environments? How would you describe it?
Um, there's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. I think that one of the main things is not so much legislation over here as there is in the UK
Mm,
on various things, but we have to look at what all the safety requirements are. And in England, they're much hotter on safety requirements and everything you have to do, and form filling
yeah,
and applications. And here, because and that bearing in mind that you can fit England into Indiana, so it's a lot of
yeah,
small space. But,
right.
but actually, you've got one legislative board that's governing all this. Whereas here we've got individual states, we've got individual counties. We have to
Right.
just and when
You
I
even have homeowners associations here create problems, right?
well, we did. I mean, it's not so much anymore because I think there was some legislation passed under the Biden administration to say that uh, homeowners associations can't actually just say no, you can't have it. They have to have a reasonable case, and they can make points like they don't want it on the front of the house if it's facing into the street and various other things. So we can
Right.
comply with that, but it's not, and we don't have those so much in the UK unless it's in like a gated community, but we don't get too many of those. So
Right.
it's easier and more difficult because you have to you can go to one place and you don't one state or one county and they've got completely different requirements from the one next door.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to do that investigation work and due diligence before we even start the job to make sure we're complying with all their rules and regulations and paying fees for that and the other. So
Okay.
I would say I found it was more right. One thing in England is that almost every roof, even in a row of houses, is different. You can have some with clay tile roofs, you can have some with slate roofs, you can have some, but we don't have shingle roofs in the UK. So
Mm.
shingle roofs are so much easier because you can just you've got proprietary fixings that will fix down to them and not damage the roof, and that's signed off. In England, you have to lift the tiles off, you have to get underneath, you have to connect to the actual rafters in the roof, and then shape the shingle or the tiles and put them back on again. And you have to have different fixings for each one of those. Whereas over here, we can standardize on the fixings a lot more
Yeah.
inside the
We
roof.
were in England last fall, and that was one of the things we noticed was the roofs. A lot of, like I said, tile roofs and thatch roofs, and I mean, just
Never
uh,
put one on a thatch roof. I don't think I want to try, to be
yeah,
honest.
I don't think so either. One of the that someone described what it took to build a thatch roof, and it's kind of amazing process. Very interesting, but probably not good for solar panels.
No, I've never seen solar panels on a thatch roof.
So your industry here is changing. Legislation, the tax credits going away. I mean, who knows? It might come back. We won't get into the whole politics of that, but you were sharing
Save
with
that
me
for another
earlier.
podcast.
What's that?
Save that for another podcast.
Yeah, we'll save that for another one. But you mentioned how you're starting to pivot towards commercial solutions, and which I think there's gosh, there ought to be just a huge opportunity there. But tell us about kind of what you're seeing on the commercial side and where you see that going.
I think the main thing is an education process that people on the commercial side, in many cases, are obviously focused on what they do and how they make their money. But I think if they focused on how they can save money, there's a lot of these distribution centers where they've got refrigerated warehouses that use an awful lot of power, and they've got
Yeah.
big old roofs on there, and they would save a lot of power, which enables them then to utilize that money for other services within their how they operate. So the other thing about commercial is that really you tend to take the emotion out of it when you're doing a residential property. There's various parties, husband, wife, whatever, to be considered, and the I mean, I'll tell you a quick story about when we did in England when this guy called us in to do a small, houses are much smaller in England, and we put something like about 6 or 8 panels on his roof, and we did it in a day. His wife came home that night and said, "I don't want those on the roof, take them off." And we came back next day and had to take them off. So this is where you got the emotion. Whereas in commercial stuff, they make a commercial decision. You work with professional teams.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things to consider, like structure. Uh, we actually did. I know I keep relating to the UK, but that was when my experience came from. But we did a solar panel system for the New York Stock Exchange. Uh, they had a server facility just outside London, and we had to put over 3,000 panels on the roof. And when we
Wow.
did that, we had to work with a structural engineer because it was a multi-tiered roof. And
Mm.
if we put too many on one point, it would make the building lean over. So we had to put on one side, then the other side, then come back to that side, then that side. So that's how we did it.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot in the news. There've been talk of data centers coming to the area. I know Oldham County almost had one, and then it got scrapped. And the reason it got scrapped was the concerns about the impact on the energy grid. Um, does solar have an impact
Yes.
of
I mean, it
playing in
has
that?
good and bad impacts. You have to remember that the American energy distribution system is quite old
Yeah.
and is under strain in a lot of places. So that's why you get benefit from it. It means that if you're providing the energy at the source, you're not having to run it through cables there, so you don't get
Mhm.
brownouts. Especially as people's electrical requirements are getting greater and greater.
Yeah.
With these data centers, there's an enormous load on the grid, and they'd have to
Yeah.
restructure the whole grid system. So by putting solar on, you will get localized power production, which can then
Hmm.
serve the building. And obviously, a lot of people say, yeah, what about at night when the sun's not out? So yes, I mean, one, you've got to think the data center is 24 hours, so therefore electrical storage is coming more into play. Uh,
Right.
and also, if you take that overnight, if you're using that electricity, then the surrounding area probably won't be using that much electricity overnight. So therefore, you've got spare capacity.
Yeah.
So obviously, horses for courses, but it's a general benefit, I think, to the industry.
Is just like I said, kind of a ticking time bomb, and parts of the country are already in trouble. Um, but these data centers kind of concern me just because I don't know if we've got the capacity for all of them, and we need them because everybody wants AI, right? Everybody wants their AI servers because we want to use
Yes.
ChatGPT, but yet there's a cost to that. So
Yeah.
a typical, and I know there's no such thing as a typical, but if a data center is going in and they had a big field or they have a big roof and they could put in a whole bunch of panels. I mean, are you looking at like defraying 10-20% of their energy, half? What do you think?
I mean, there isn't really a limit on it. If you've got the money, the space, and the wherewithal, then you can provide almost 100% of it. But
Okay.
as I just mentioned, that it's a 24-hour operation, so they
Right.
need to be able to store the power during the day as well as using it from the solar panels, and then using that at night or on days when it's cloudy, dark. Middle of December, you're not going to get the same sort of power output from the grid, so from the solar panels. So therefore, you've got to provide battery storage to accommodate enough surplus capacity to serve those particular times.
Hmm. Okay.
I mean,
Fascinating.
it's going on to the residential side now. You mentioned just a while back there about people losing power and things like that. That is driving more and more people into using battery storage in their homes because
Right.
they don't want if they're on a slightly remote area, they don't want to have power going out for 2, 3 days, fridges, freezers, that sort of thing. So
Mm.
some people would say, right, it's not cheap. I will give you that.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, but we can provide a partial backup system where you would have what's called an essentials load panel. And then you
Yeah.
connect into that things that will serve your fridges, freezers. You can have your internet, you have some lighting, you can have like a fan for a furnace or something like that, that you can run for maybe a couple of days. And if you want to, you can pay more money and add on and have more batteries and get more storage capacity. You can run more and more of your household.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. It reminds my son-in-law were missionaries in Haiti for 3 years, and their house was, there wasn't any power grid down there. It's terrible, but they had a solar system on their house and a battery backup, and they couldn't like run full everything for 24 hours, but they could keep the house operating 24 hours, and with that, of course, down there you don't get a lot of rain, you get a lot of sun, but uh, I mean, if they could figure out how to do it in a place like Haiti, we ought
Yeah,
to be able to do it better here. Um,
I think so. I mean, a lot of it comes down to the cost perspective. In that, if you've got to provide a full house system, you could be talking 70, 80, $90,000. And
mm,
But if you only want a partial system, then you've got a lot less price. And then you rely on the grid as backup to that as
Right.
well. But also, we've had a lot of inquiries recently where people have been quoted phenomenal prices for connecting the electric to their property if they're somewhat remote. And they
Yeah.
think, well, maybe I could put a solar panel system in. One, they won't have any more bills, and two, they won't have to pay that extortionate fee for doing a connection.
Right.
Some of the local power companies have actually been referring people to us, say, look, this is going to cost you X amount of dollars to do this. Have you thought of going solar? You know,
Oh, wow.
so I mean, they're on board with it. I think the smaller the utility, like the REMCs, the more
Mhm.
friendly and cooperative they are. The bigger
Yeah.
ones, Dukes and that, they are more orientated towards profits. So they tend to fight it every step of the way.
Yeah. Well, so very cool. This is very interesting stuff, Peter. I'm this a lot of this engineering stuff kind of gets over my head a little bit, but
That's
I've
what we're
always
here
been.
for.
I know I've always been fascinated. I've always been fascinated with solar energy, and so I feel like I've learned a little bit today. What do obviously commercial is on the horizon, but what else? What do you see for the future of your industry, in particular your company? What's your focus?
There's a few things development in the pipeline for different types. At the moment, all the solar panels are silicon based. There's a lot of work being done on ceramic based
Hmm.
panels, which are a lot more efficient. But until they get to a stage where they're commercially viable and they're able
Right.
to mass produce, then the price is going to be extortionate. But I mean, I think one of the biggest adverts for longevity is like the Voyager. Still got solar panels. They're still working 50 years after they went up. They're still producing, and
Oh,
they're
wow. Yeah.
millions of miles away from the sun now. So, but as far as our company is concerned, I mean, we're an organic based company. We're a family run company, so we're quite positive about the future. We don't know how the market's going to go after as legislation changes to at the moment to try and restrict solar and renewable energy. But I think people's make their own decisions on how they want to do it, and if they decide that they want energy independence from the grid. I mean, another fact about the UK is that if even though it's small, as I said, it will fit into Indiana easily. There's over 300 to 400 different energy providers you can go with over there,
Hmm.
and it's at the click of a button on the computer. So if you decide you don't like the rates you're paying on this particular one, you can go to another one and save yourself, a reasonable amount of money and have a
Yeah.
better service. In America, you don't get that. You just
Right.
whatever company is serving your area. So therefore,
Yeah.
they've got a monopoly, and they know it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
I actually used to work for one of those for many years, way
don't.
back, way back in my career. But well, Peter, this has been interesting. I appreciate the education, and I wish you much success. Uh, Share your website if anybody wants in the Southern Indiana, I guess Louisville area. Uh, how do they find you guys?
Well, we've got a website which is www.starsolarspecialists with an S on the end.com, and from
Okay.
that you can make an application for an estimate on there. We've also got the office number, which is 812-913-0867, in which you can call in. We have answering facilities there where you can just leave a message and we'll get back to you.
Very good. Well, it's a Star Solar Specialist with a S on the end, plural, .com. That's the best way of finding you guys. So thank you
That's the
again
best
for
way.
coming on the program. I appreciate you sharing your story. Welcome to America 10 years later.
Thank you.
We're, uh,
Thank you for
we're
the
happy
topic.
you're here.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode, where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.